Hello, everybody, and welcome to the show that I lovingly call the Woodruff Report. I am your host, David Woodruff, and today we are coming at you with a bunch of very interesting stuff. Again, this is going to be a very football americano, that is, football-heavy podcast, so all my other sports listeners, be patient, work with me here. It's Super Bowl season, so I've got to be a little football heavy, but once it's over, we'll get back to that mix. So I mentioned last show that I was going to talk about the NFL draft. Do not worry, I am not going crazy. I did not talk about it last show. I had lots of national championship and NFC, AFC championship coverage, so I wasn't able to talk about it, but I promise you this time, pinky promise, I will come at you with some NFL draft coverage, specifically your San Francisco 49ers, what they're going to do wrong, really. I mean, I'm not trying to be a pessimist here, but what can go wrong will go wrong, quoting the great Stephen A. Smith there. So I'm coming at you with a little bit of NFL draft coverage. I'm also hitting you with a little bit of Super Bowl prediction, Falcons, Patriots, and what looks to be a very interesting, fun matchup. I'll talk about that later. And then I'm going to finish the show with a brief recap of where we are in the Barclays Premier League. Yes, my English soccer fans, I'm going to give you a recap of what's going on because it's been hectic, crazy madness lately. Chelsea leads the league. Sunderland stays rooted at the bottom right now, and I'll tell you all the crazy stuff that's happening in between. This is the Woodruff Report. I'm your host, David Woodruff, and we are going to get going in 3, 2, 1. So the NFC Championship and AFC Championship might not have been the crazy close overtime madness divisional round-like games that some people might have wanted, but we certainly got a treat from both Tom Brady and Matt Ryan in what they did to both the Steelers and the Packers respectively. So I'm going to start with the NFC, where the Falcons took down the surging Green Bay Packers by a score of 44-21. And this game, it doesn't sound that close, and if you watch the game like I did, the score definitely did not flatter the Falcons. They could have beaten the Green Bay Packers by more. So, as I predicted on my previous show, both defenses were not able to stop the other opposing QB. Falcons were not really able to stop Aaron Rodgers, and the Packers certainly weren't able to stop Matt Ryan. Yet, the Falcons were just more opportunistic, as they have been throughout the second half of the season. They're still not an elite defense. They're young, and they've got some promising pieces in place. Vic Beasley, Keanu Neal. But they're certainly not in the conversation with, say, the Denver Broncos or the Seattle Seahawks as an elite defense. But they proved to be optimistic. They did get one interception, and the turnover battle we knew was going to be a huge factor in this game. They also forced a fumble deep in their own territory as Aaron Rodgers was driving down the field. So they forced a fumble, got a pick. The pick was just kind of a long heave by Aaron Rodgers, kind of threw it up at the end of the first half. But still, turnovers were turnovers, and that eventually led to points for Matt Ryan. On the offensive side of the ball, the Falcons did what they did best. They moved down the field and scored, and they started it from the first drive of the game. Matt Ryan took him 80 yards and finished with a little shovel dump pass to Mohamed Sanu, the veteran wide receiver. By the way, I had him on my fantasy team. Great pickup. Not many people really picked the Falcons to do well this season, and Mohamed Sanu was just kind of sitting there on the waiver wire, and he ended up being a great addition. I saw recently that more people had bet on the Cleveland Browns to win the Super Bowl than the Atlanta Falcons, which just seems crazy in hindsight. I mean, look at how good. I feel like we knew this offense was good, but we didn't know it was this good. I mean, they had Julio Jones, but we didn't know how the other weapons would develop around it. Matt Ryan was not so great last season, but anyway, I digressed there. But The Falcons were great. Matt Ryan was great. His final stat line read 27 of 38 for 392 yards and 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. He also had a rushing touchdown. So, fantastic game against the banged-up Green Bay Packers defense. Their only hope coming into this game was that they'd be able to sort of pressure Matt Ryan, maybe force a few mistakes, maybe get a few turnovers, but the pass rush wasn't there. Offensive line of the Falcons, led by Alex Mack, did a great job holding Julius Peppers and company to few hits, if any, sacks on Matt Ryan. And he just picked that depleted secondary apart. The linebackers especially couldn't keep with Devontae Freeman and Tevin Coleman out of the backfield, and it's difficult to cover Julio Jones no matter how good your secondary is. So Packers tried to double cover, maybe give him some safety help, and the other weapons on the Atlanta offense did very well as well. I mean, the double coverage didn't actually help. Julio Jones still had a great day. He had like a 70-yard touchdown where he was jammed off the line and held. They were actually called for defensive holding on the play. He was like practically tackled by the Packers nickel corner, and he like got away from him and then caught the ball and got like 60 yards after catch, breaking a tackle down the sideline. Crazy play, freak athlete, Julio Jones. Great player. Matt Ryan cementing his status as, if not a lock for MVP, very likely MVP. Speaking of MVPs, Tom Brady and the Patriots are back in the Super Bowl. I feel like I say that every year, but they are back. And they got the job done against the Steelers team that it seemed like they really had a good shot of going into Foxborough and winning. Le'Veon Bell picked up a groin injury early in the game, and once that happened, it really didn't look good for the Steelers. I mean, against the Patriots, you need all your weapons, and going into Foxborough, even with Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell, Big Ben, they were still underdogs, so once Le'Veon went down, the Steelers' chances really kind of went out the window. Steelers did move the ball decently. Big Ben played well, but they had to settle for a lot of field goals in the Patriots' red zone, and Tom Brady did what he did best, which is win football games. This game was really never close. The Patriots went out, got a big lead. At one point, were up like 31-9 or something, and the Steelers really, with what ended up being a depleted offense, couldn't come back. So Tom Brady versus Matt Ryan in the Super Bowl in what looks to be an exciting matchup. It's always fun to see how Bill Belichick schemes against great offenses. We remember their famous Super Bowl win over the greatest show on turf, the St. Louis Rams. And this looks to be another historically great offense. You want to know my pick? I look into my crystal ball. The Woodruff Report and their secret crystal ball always get the right predictions. So if you want to hear a correct prediction, look no further than your friends at the Woodruff Report. I am picking my boys from Atlanta, the Falcons, to go into Houston and beat Bill Belichick and the Patriots. And I think that this will be a very good game, very similar to maybe the Seahawks-Patriots game of a few years ago. 31-28 final with Atlanta coming up on top. I think that both defenses won't really be able to stop the opposing offense, and it will again, similarly to the Falcons-Packers game, come down to who can have a more opportunistic defense. Historically, New England's always had a ball-hawking defense that really gets turnovers when it counts, and this year's no different, but I think that Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, and company can get the job done in Houston. So, my pick, 31-28 Falcons over Patriots. Now, moving to another not as important but very interesting topic, the NFL Draft. It is coming up, and for fans of teams who are not very good, Cleveland Browns, San Francisco 49ers, Chicago Bears, this is probably the most exciting time of the year, because this is time when there is that little spark of hope in you that maybe, just maybe, we're going to get this draft right. I'm looking at you, Cleveland fans, because you guys haven't gotten a draft right in a while. So, Cleveland will have the number 1 pick. San Francisco will have the 2nd overall pick. And I'm going to be talking specifically about the 49ers because we are here in the Bay Area, and I am a big 49ers fan. So, before I tell you what I think should happen in the 49ers draft to make them the most competitive, I'd like to say 2 things. First of all, this 49ers roster is so bad, that if the 49ers had the first 10 picks, I repeat, picks 1 through 10 in this draft, I doubt they would be competitive next year. With picks 1 through 10, they still wouldn't be competitive next year. Second of all, anything I say will not matter. First of all, because Jed York is going to mess it all up, because he is the absolute epitome of failure and badness. So he somehow, some way, he will find a way to mess up this draft. And I can tell you how he will. First of all, he can draft a quarterback. In general, this would be a horrible decision for the 49ers to do. Drafting a quarterback is not what these guys need at this point. Although Kaepernick was not very good last year, he wasn't terrible. The offense could move the ball somewhat, and there were other gaping holes on this roster. So a lot of teams, in front offices around the NFL, the common thought is that to go kind of build from your quarterback and out, but I don't think this is the best idea. I think that the 49ers should take kind of a more Denver Broncos approach and try to get talent around Kaepernick, because he's proven that he can be above average. Just look at the Jim Harbaugh days. He was far above average. He led a very good team to the Super Bowl, and they almost came back and won that game. So he's proven that he's actually good when surrounded by the right players. So step 1 for the 49ers should be to surround him with good players. So I've been seeing in a lot of mock drafts the 49ers taking Deshaun Kaiser, the quarterback out of Notre Dame, or Mitch Trubisky, the quarterback out of North Carolina. And if they do this, this will be a colossal failure. A colossal failure. And you know what? I'm saying it now. If the 49ers draft Mitch Trubisky, I am going on strike. I will not watch a single game for the entire 2017-2018 season. I repeat, if the 49ers draft Mitch Trubisky, I am rage quitting football. I'm throwing my controller at the screen, breaking my TV, and storming off in disgust, because it would just be a classic Jed York. I mean, there's so much talent in this draft, and if he finds a way to mess it up, that would just be perfect Jed York, the epitome of what he has done as a 49ers general manager. So I hate to be such a hater. I hate to be such a hater, but the 49ers roster is really bad, and quarterback is not the answer. There's no quarterback in this draft who's going to be the Messiah and come in, and there's no Jameis Winston's, Marcus Mariotas. I think that drafting Mitch Trubisky, Deshaun Kaiser, Deshaun Watson, Mitch Trubisky, Deshaun Kaiser, Deshaun Watson at the number 2 pick is a bit of a stretch, and the 49ers aren't a super quarterback needy team. That being said, who should the 49ers draft? I've identified 2 places on the roster that I think need special attention, and that's the wideout position and the linebacker position, especially the linebacker position. Let's talk for a second about Chris Borland. You may notice that I said nothing. That's because he does not show up on the football field. He is probably the worst linebacker I've ever seen live as a starter in the NFL on the San Francisco 49ers. Chris Borland is starting on a National Football League team. Just think about that. So I was reading a Bleacher Report article recently, and it was saying notable free agents from all 32 NFL teams. And when I saw Chris Borland as a notable free agent, I laughed my head off because he might be the least notable free agent in the history of football. I hate to say it, but he played awful this season, and he was a big reason why the 49ers had the worst rushing defense in the NFL. So in recent drafts, the 49ers have loaded up on defensive line talent, Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner, and they've actually played pretty well. Jed, good job. You actually did something rather decent. So the D-line isn't the problem here. It's really the guys behind them. Filling gaps, filling holes. It's the linebackers. So with that in mind, who should the 49ers draft? And I've identified Reggie Ragland, the linebacker out of the University of Alabama, as someone who could really fit in the 49ers system and could really help this 32nd ranked rush defense. So Reggie Ragland was a great player on a great Alabama defense. And he's aggressive, he has good instincts, he's fast, he's physical. He's just what the 49ers need to plug the often gaping holes that offensive lines are able to create. So, the 49ers could go with the linebacker route. Reggie Ragland would be a great choice. There's also the wide receiver route. Wide receiver route. Man, I'm kind of on a roll today. The wide receiver route. So the 49ers really, they had a Quentin Patton, Jeremy Curley, Torrey Smith. Torrey Smith, you are a good player, but this is not the right place for you. The 49ers they just don't really throw the ball down the field with any kind of accuracy, and I really feel bad for Torrey Smith. He just kind of has to run deep every play. He can take the top off a defense, and he's just rewarded with like one catch every 7 games or something, which is just insane. The 49ers need some young, fast weapons on the outside. So Mike Williams, the wide receiver out of Clemson, is someone who could really fix this need. He could plug this leak for the 49ers. He's big, he's fast, he goes up and high points the ball, and he has good hands, which is really having good hands is really important on this 49ers team because, as we all know, Colin Kaepernick is not the most accurate of quarterbacks. He high points the ball, he goes up and get it, he's physical at the top of his route, he has good feet, he runs good routes. He's a great all-around player, and he's what the 49ers would need. So, that's a little bit of what the 49ers should do in this draft. Linebacker, wide receiver are 2 gaping holes on the roster they need to fix. They should not, I repeat, they should not draft a quarterback. There's no messiah in this draft, and if they draft Mitch Trubisky, as I've said before, I will boycott the entire 2017-2018 49ers season. So, around the other league, the Cleveland Browns, almost all mock drafts have them taking Myles Garrett, the defensive end or pass rusher out of Texas A&M, an incredibly explosive player, freakishly fast and athletic off the edge. He is something that the Cleveland Browns need on what has really become a kind of promising young core with Terrell Pryor, Jamie Collins, and company. They, as a 49ers fan, I can say that the Cleveland Browns have more hope. And I think that the Cleveland Browns fan base has more hope than the 49ers fan base does. Because that roster, it's young and it's not very good, but I think that there's more hope for the future in Cleveland than there is in San Francisco. So Myles Garrett would be a nice addition to their pass rushing, someone to go get the quarterback like we saw with Joey Bosa for the San Diego Chargers. The Chicago Bears are really someone who I think should be drafting a quarterback. I think the Jay Cutler era has to be over in Chicago. He just doesn't seem like he's... A lot of people say that he doesn't care. I watch First Take with Stephen A. Smith a lot, and Stephen A. Smith's a huge Jay Cutler hater. And I'm not that harsh on the guy. I think that he works hard, and he does try his best. And he's been portrayed very negatively in the media. But I think that the situation is just not very positive for him in Chicago right now, and I think Chicago really needs to take the route of a new quarterback. So they have the options: Deshaun Watson, Deshaun Kaiser, Mitch Trubisky are the general consensus top 3 on the board right now, and I think it would be a good idea for the Bears to pick one. They would not have to play him first year, kind of let him settle into the offense, but it's time for a new QB in Shocktown, as my boy Kanye calls it. So that is my very brief recap of the NFL draft. Moving on to the Barclays Premier League, where Chelsea head the table as of today. They are 8 points clear of second place Arsenal, who are 1 point above arch rivals Tottenham. Liverpool is in 4th. Manchester City is in 5th. And in the Europa League qualifying place is Jose Mourinho's Manchester United. At the bottom of the table, Sunderland sit at the foot, with Hull City right above them, and rounding out the top 3 is none other than Crystal Palace. Swansea City also are in a fierce relegation duel, along with title winners Leicester, who are sitting in a precarious position in 15th place. So there have been quite a few crazy storylines in the Premier League this year. Literally this year, not even this season. Like, since January 1st, there have been some crazy storylines, starting with the whole Diego Costa, Antonio Conte incident. So this is what apparently happened. Costa was complaining about an injury and was sitting out practice, and Conte and the medical staff was basically like, you're not hurt, you're kind of being a little bit lazy, etc., etc. And apparently Diego Costa and Antonio Conte got into a huge row fight, and at the end Conte said, or I quote the very unreliable English media, British media, I should say, like, you should go to China or something. And so Diego Costa's been receiving huge offers from the Chinese Super League, as have many other top players, as a huge amount of money has been invested in the Chinese league to make it one of the biggest in the world. So apparently he was offered enormous, monumental wages in China. And so Conte and the medical staff apparently thought that this was kind of getting to him, this attention. So the fight ended with Conte saying, basically, well, then you go to China if you don't want to work. Just go take the money, go chill with some Chinese food, get fat. I'm elaborating here, but trying to kind of get in the Conte mindset. But apparently they've made up. Diego Costa did what he did best and scored in his last outing, and all that trouble seems to be behind it. And to make matters better for Chelsea fans, they're 8 points clear at the top of the table, so what's not to like over in Chelsea? Now, to a different London team, West Ham, who have been experiencing another kind of crazy fight with their star, Dimitri Payet, who has refused to play for them. After just inking a new contract, he has told his manager that he is not going to play. Slaven Bilic, I am not going to play. And apparently he won't even play for their youth sides, who he's been training with to stay in shape. He's demanded a trade, and obviously other teams are very excited because he's a top-class player, as he's shown in the Euros and last season at West Ham. So that is an ongoing story, the whole Dimitri Payet situation. So crazy things happening in the Premier League, and a lot of these stem from the amount of money that's really in the game right now. Wages are getting increasingly high. Large teams such as Real Madrid and Barcelona and Manchester United are paying huge amounts of fees for young football players. Football, that is the European kind. For young football players, I mean, look no further than Exhibit A, Paul Pogba. He's making enormous sums, and he's not even 25 years old. So the new money infused into this game has really, I think, in my opinion, it has affected players to act out in this kind of way, because I don't want to say they're getting complacent, but their standard of living is obviously very high with the millions and millions of dollars that they are making. So that's the Premier League roundup. Chelsea at the top, Sunderland as usual, fighting for their lives at the bottom of the table. So, thank you for listening. This has been the Woodruff Report. Just a recap of what I talked about in this episode. I talked about Super Bowl 51, the Falcons and Patriots who will be playing in Houston. I predicted that the Falcons would win 31-28 over the Patriots. I gave you a small NFL draft preview. Talked about who the 49ers should take. Threatened to boycott the 2017-2018 season. So you know a podcast is great when there's one boycott threaten in it. And then I finished up by talking a little bit about what's been going on in the Premier League. Chelsea at the top, Sunderland at the bottom. Thank you for listening. This has been an extremely fun episode. I am David Woodruff. This is the Woodruff Report. I'll see you next time in a week. Adios, amigos.